All right, everybody. Good morning, afternoon, and evening, and welcome to Poly Chat, a part of the Gay Talk Interactive Podcast channel. On this show, we provide unique and sometimes conflicting views on polyamory for men, and here on a singular platform. I am your host and moderator, Byron Anthos, registered behavioral therapist, and currently working towards my degree in marriage and family counseling. Now, let's get to our panel. First, we have our creator and operator of PolyChat, moderator of the Poly community on Facebook and in New York. We have Oleg. Hello, Oleg.
Hello, I'm so happy to be here. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. And from Chicago, we have Jose. Jose works in the nonprofit sector and started a polysocial group for gay men in his city. Welcome, Jose.
Hello, everybody.
All right. And up next, we have Sergio, a BIPOC community organizer and activist from San Francisco, Guatemala, board member of Onyx Northwest, a club for men of color. Welcome, Sergio.
Thank you, Anthony.
And we also have Justin Terry Smith, award-winning actor, life coach, therapist. He also has a doctorate in public health, author, father of two, and founding member of the Onyx. What was it? The Onyx Midwest chapter? Correct me.
Mid-Atlantic
Area, and hopefully to be a founding member of the New Mexico area. Welcome, Justin Terry-Smith. All right, and thank you guys for joining us. This is for the most part, our regular panel on this show. But today we have a very, very, very special guest. She hails from the greater Chicago area, certified matchmaker. She is the founder and president of Birds of a Feather Matchmaking. She's a dating coach, an ethical non-monogamy educator, and U.S. Navy veteran, Victoria Joseph. Welcome, Victoria.
Hi, everybody. Happy to be here.
Well, we are very excited to have you too. We have been putting out the word about what the show is going to be. I reached out to some poly communities and on Facebook that are not exclusively for men or gay men at all, because I got an opportunity to look through your website and I saw you guys really do run the gamut on sexual preferences and identities, and I think that's amazing. Thank you for doing that. So hopefully we have a lot of people here that just want to know a little bit more about you. So we have devoted this hour to you.
Yes, let's get into it.
All right. Well, first of all, I just gave your list of accolades. So if you don't mind, if we can get a little bit of your background, if you want to start with the Navy, go for it. Tell us about your experience.
Yeah, so I was the active duty in the Navy. I worked in aviation in San Diego, and I lived in Japan. And I was active duty for 5 years, and I got out in 2019. And from there, got a bachelor's, and I got an MBA, and I wanted to start my own business. And the idea of matchmaking came to me initially when I was honeymooning with my husband, and a screenshot was going around of a matchmaker looking for singles for a client. And I thought that would be amazing. And I thought of like what the career path of matchmaker could bring. And I looked into seeing if there was any non-monogamous matchmakers, and there weren't any. So I've personally had experience being non-monogamous for 8 years. And of course, I was like, this sounds like the right fit for me. I looked further into it. There's interviews of matchmakers turning with people who are kinky, any kind of non-monogamous dynamic they wanted to be in. And so I got certified through the Global Love Institute and became the first matchmaker specializing in non-monogamous relationships. And I started my company, Birds of Feather Matchmaking, in February 2023. So it's been going solid for about a year and a half. And I service, though, nationwide with a preference for a major metropolitan area. So anybody who wants to be in a non-monogamous relationship, that's who I work with.
Mm-hmm. I personally been in polyamory space maybe like for 3 years or so. And when I was looking for information, I was looking for people, community and stuff like that. It was always something around Chicago. Tell me what's special about this place, why you have such a big presence of polyamory people, straight and gay.
Chicago is truly so diverse. There's something for everyone here. Everyone also has that Midwest hospitality. Everyone is generally really friendly and really kind and really receptive to saying, hi, how are you? And like just telling you about your day. And sometimes it's word vomit, sometimes it's not. And we all really do want community here, whether it is just like common hobbies and interests, or they want someone who's more niche. And so there's actually a lot of there's a lot of clubs and communities that are in the Illinois area, and because everyone wants to be with like-minded people, and as soon as you find your people, you just want more of it. And so there are clubs, and whether you're on the kinky side or you want something more casual or you want to dance, like there's a lot of things that are up and coming. Specifically, in Chicago, as of recently, there's kind of like a little bit of even with Jose here, there's like a little bit of a new wave of us people just like wanting to create these spaces for people. For example, I don't know if anyone here is familiar with the Open organization, but they just had the Week of Visibility for Non-monogamy, and I hosted a Sunday rooftop brunch for non-monogamous people in the local area, and it had about 50 to 60 people turn out. So it wasn't too bad for a little get together, and we all just enjoyed ourselves. And I created like a little bingo card where it was just talking about things like to look for someone and who might hit these marks, and just start conversations about polyamory and swinging and open relationships and just common hobbies and interests that like kind of cross over. Like I had if you love the Renaissance, or if you love rock climbing, like, stuff like that. So I just want to create spaces that get conversations flowing. I also helped launch Balloon previously Balloons, Plura's ENM social club, and that was over a year ago, I want to say. And there I also hosted that and just created other icebreakers to get the conversations flowing. And yeah, so it's something that I really enjoy, something I want to continue to do and will do. And Chicago is just stunning. It's beautiful here. So I personally am a big fan of Chicago. I'm originally from Arizona, so I'm really happy to be here and continue to explore all Chicago has to offer. So I'm here to stay.
Is there anything specific you can say about polyamory people, and like any description, and why you think Chicago has a lot of people from polyamory, and some cities struggle maybe to find like-minded people like us?
So your question is, why do I think Chicago is good for poly people?
Yeah, if there's any specific qualities of these people, if there's any secret, and there's a lot of people watching us and will watch us later, and they're looking for a community, they're looking for dates, they're looking
Yeah.
for, but they don't live in Chicago, they live elsewhere.
I think a part of it, at least in the network that I know of, everyone is very just inviting. Like
Mm.
they want to include as many people in whatever they're throwing together, whether it's karaoke or going to an apple orchard or something like that, or going tubing, going to the movies. Like people are just so inviting, and they're like, invite your friends. Like it's really not an exclusive kind of like secret kind of community. I mean, granted, there are people who want to keep their personal life under wraps, but people are pretty outspoken about it, and they want to build up this community. So they're the ones branching out. They're the ones having casual conversations in vanilla settings, like myself. And so I think people are, and whenever I do go to like regular business networking events and I talk about what I do, it's like the hottest topic there. People are like, their mind are blown, and they're like, this is just amazing. So people like me who are just doing this, we're just normalizing it slowly but surely. And I think that's kind of what's helping to grow the community here, is that we're all normalizing it. And there's a lot of clubs that have a lot of faces, and you realize like there are a ton of people out here who are just like me, and then working towards like getting their friendships or their contacts built up, and just being overall inviting. And I don't know if every city has that kind of mentality where they want to be so inviting.
So
Beautiful,
from
Jose.
Chicago, I want to add from that what Victoria just said, because um, number one, the first thing that I ever found in Chicago, there was a meetup for poly folks. So it's for everybody. And that's very active. They meet at least a couple of times a month. And there is one meetup per month specifically for queer folks. So that's really cool. I started a group, and that is basically, it was because I I didn't have a community for other poly folks. So it literally became a matter of me finding out that somebody that I already knew was poly. And then I'm like, okay, who else do you know that's poly? And then we started a Facebook chat, and people just kept adding and adding and adding. And now we have like 15 people. that get together on a regular basis. And it's nothing formal. My intent was to make sure that we had a community and that we had some sort of social events. We don't have to talk about all things poly all the time. It's about making connections, right? So that was my intent with that. And I think there are because we are Chicago, it's the largest city in the Midwest. We are surrounded by farms. And like this is like a refuge where people can come and see things that you would see in New York or in San Francisco or somewhere else. So I think it attracts a lot of people from different areas, and they can meet here in a liberal city, and be themselves and explore polyamory. So that is just my theory.
Great. Sergio.
I want to kind of like piggyback a little bit on the Chicago part. Two of my best friends growing up through my 20s were from Chicago, and it is true. Anytime that I set foot in Chicago, people were incredibly welcoming and incredibly sweet. All of a sudden, I had like 50 friends on a weekend visit, and everybody was opening up the doors of their homes to come and hang out. My best friend from Chicago says it's because of the weather, because it's so cold during the winter that during the summertime, everybody just wants to hang out and have a good time. Um, and I think that you touched on something. So I think that like that's also been my experience. Is now you mentioning Chicago and everything. I think that one of my first kind of like non-monogamous experiences in my early 20s was actually in Chicago during a trip to Market Days. It was amazing, but it was one of those first times that I actually, even being from San Francisco, one of the first times that I actually experienced that. And it's again people coming from all over these places to live in the city and to just be really cool about spending time there. You mentioned something really important, Victoria, that you said in all of this, and it was like the creating the safe spaces, right? Wherever you are, is creating those spaces for people to be able to congregate and see other people like themselves. I want to take it back to the beginning, kind of when you were talking a little bit about yourself and how like you're originally from Arizona and then went to Chicago and had this desire to be a matchmaker because it didn't really exist for ENM people, right? And being from Guatemala, I grew up and also partially Jewish. I grew up around matchmakers and the concept of matchmakers and people coming together. So to me, it gives me a little tingle because I believe it at 100%. What was your upbringing a little bit like between Arizona and Chicago that kind of pushed you in that direction? Were you raised conservative? Were you raised liberal? Was this something new that you came into? Like, I'd love to hear a little bit about how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, so being brought up in Arizona, that's actually where so I consider myself more of a swinger more than poly, although I did dabble in polyamory a little bit. But I learned the term swinging from a really young age when I was in high school, and I thought to myself, like, that's amazing. Like you can go and hook up with other people, and you come back home and you're normal and you're still with your loving partner and you just do life together. Like that sounds very appealing. And that was always on the back of my head. And in my household, my parents were never sex shaming. We weren't conservative. We weren't very religious. I guess I am technically Jewish as well. My mom's Jewish, and I went on a birthright trip with my sisters a couple years ago. But I am not. I consider myself not religious. But so with that, like I was pretty much free to just kind of do what I wanted, probably more than the average high school person, but like because I was never restricted and I had great parents and there was no issues in that kind of manner. But from there, so after high school, I joined the military. Time had passed, and then I met my now husband at a small house party, and we hit it off right away. His friends had invited me to go Mario karting with them on the streets of Tokyo. So I said, yes, of course. And then a few days later, I was Peach and he was Mario, and then we've been hanging out ever since. And in the very beginning stages of our relationship, we actually found ourselves with another woman who was in an open marriage, and we were kind of in a throuple for a little bit. And at the time, we weren't familiar with polyamory terms, how to make that work. So it kind of did fizzle out. But it was fun while it lasted. But then it was just the two of us, and from there I think I am the one. We don't remember exactly who brought it up first, but I think it was my idea to like bring it up because I was inspired through Tumblr at the time because there was beautiful pictures and gifs and blogs about non-monogamous relationships, and he was like, "Yeah, sounds great to me." So basically, what we did from there is we talked about it, and then we were long distance for 6 months because I was on deployment. But while we were long distance, we wrote eroticas to each other about swinging. Like us, we put us in our environment, our different perspectives, and it was still very fun and exciting. So when we moved to San Diego, that's kind of where our lifestyle launched. We learned about FetLife initially, which FetLife, if no one's heard of it, it's like a fetish Facebook. It's a little rough around the edges, but there's definitely diamonds in there. It's really good about public events and kind of launching your interest from there, truly, even though it can be cringe. But you learn a lot from if you would like to learn from it. So I went there and I went to a poly meetup and I went to a rope shibari meetup. And then once I met swingers, I was like, okay, this is like the community like that aligns with me the most. And then pretty much it's just been a swinger ever since. So that and I loved it because of the people. Like everyone is so authentic, everyone is so friendly, everyone's so fun. And they're my favorite kind of people, honestly. Like there's no holding back who you are because why? That you're out like that. And even if you're like at clubs or house parties, people just they don't really hold back much. You can really ask anybody any question. And I really do ask like deeper questions sometimes just to say or just to see if they'll be like, oh, I'm not comfortable. But no one's ever said I'm not comfortable answering that. And they just kind of share whatever it is about themselves, which I've always admired and love. And I feel like I'm the same way too. So I was kind of grew a lot of passion from non-monogamy and the people and the dynamics and just everyone doing the unconventional thing. And I want more of that in this world. I think most people should be non-monogamous, like kind of like is one of my bigger opinions. And I talk about it with my vanilla friends, and a lot of them have even dabbled in it. They've given it a try and they've only had positive outcomes. They said that it's like only improve their relationship, it's improved their communication, it's improved their trust. So like if everyone could just communicate, there wouldn't have to be so much infidelity. Like people realize like non-monogamy is like so common, but it's generally in an ethical sense, right? It's cheating. Either they cheated, they got cheated on, or they know someone who has, right? So like that could all be avoided if they just had a conversation or at least given the person like the option to either continue or to opt out. So that's why I'm like, that's kind of why I like my job, obviously, is because I ask all these questions ahead of time, like, what do you want for yourself? And what kind of polyamorous relationship do you see yourself in? Because as we all know, there's tons of terms, there's tons of dynamics, and they're all different. But it's still like under the whole umbrella. So just overall, just that's kind of a wrap up on how my military career transitioned to my matchmaking career. And yeah, just very aligned in this kind of way. And I'm just happy to be the one to do it.
Jose mentioned something in the chat and just says there's a very strong sense of authenticity in the community. And I think that that's really what comes across when you're having that conversation around matchmaking and putting people together, right? Like, I imagine that in that matchmaking, in monogamous situations is going to be very different than in an ethical non-monogamy, right? And having the ability to be able to come to the table, like you said, you with your now husband, and being able to kind of lay the cards on the table and be like, this is who I am, and being able to find a way to make that work in a really beautiful way is really special. So thank you for sharing that.
My turn?
Yeah, go ahead,
Okay,
Jason.
okay. Thank you. So I did have a question. It was in my head and it bounced out because I was trying to hold on to it. But I do have one thing to ask you is like, so there, there's like you said, there's many definitions and many explanations on poly and swinging and things like that. So a lot of times, of course, my friends who are not poly, they said, oh, so you guys are swingers. And we're like, well, not really. And I have to kind of define like this is what we define poly with each other. This is what we define it as. And this is what you're saying. This is what your perception of swinging is. And it's like a lot of people don't understand the difference or if there is a difference. So I want to ask you like your personal definition, just to like get clarity for everyone, is like what is polyamory versus swinging?
I answer this question all the time. And in fact, it's like the word ethical non-monogamy goes over most people's head. Like they can't wrap around like, what does that mean? Like if you like break it down, they're like, oh. But pretty much I tell people there's three main forms of ethical non-monogamy. First, it's an open relationship, which means that there's a preference for personal freedom. They want to be able to, do things separately. They want to have hall passes and they want to, do things on a whim, but of course, like with consent and awareness. And then polyamory is when you have multiple loving, intimate partners, and sometimes not always sexually. And but that's kind of like a deeper level. That's feelings of love and expressing love. Whereas swinging is more like it's more for fun. It's more typically it's couples doing things together, although that's not always the case. Sometimes there is some separate play, or some people do all the above, and they kind of figure that out as they go. But it's more for swinging is more for sexual gratification and fun. And but you can still form really good friendships, but you are emotional only with your primary partner, your husband or wife or boyfriend, girlfriend, or how they like to call themselves. But essentially you're emotionally connected to one person, but then you are free to do whatever you'd like in that kind of manner for fun. And what is your
So I
question that you
now
remembered?
I now remember the question. Sorry, it's been a long day in therapy session. So exactly. So my question is like I've seen this happen, I've seen this event go on in so many different cities, and a lot of people have different opinions about them, especially if they're experts in non or they call themselves experts in non-monogamy. Like have you ever created or been a part of or seen poly speed dating?
Yes. There
Okay.
is
What are your
someone
thoughts?
locally who does do non-monogamous poly speed dating, and I only know of one who does it, and I'm also launching non-monogamous speed. So I'm actually launching an event in Chicago in October, and at this one, at the moment that I have launched, it's gonna be my launch event, and it's for those who are single who want to be non-monogamous. And I'm also going to create a separate event for those who are poly and partner speed dating, because sometimes people want to have that one person to then grow from, whereas instead of like joining like a married couple, which that is the case a lot of times, but some people do want that strong foundation first and then they can grow from there. So I'm going to be doing two different events. The one that I know of does a mix of the both of them, so that will be kind of like something that will be differentiate from us. So yeah, that's what so there's gonna be two people that I know of in the Chicago area that, myself included, will they'll be doing it.
I love it. Thank you.
I have one question. Is that for just um straight people, for gay people, for all queer and straight people? Like what are you thinking those two events are going to be like? What's the audience, I guess?
With the speed dating events that I plan on hosting.
Yeah.
So something that I have to navigate, because non-monogamous speed dating is new to speed dating in general. And what I plan on doing, actually, I wish I had my itinerary up, but basically what I'm planning on doing is traditional matchmaking or speed dating, where there's going to be a man and a woman and the man moves around. But then the second half of the dating event, I'm going to have those who consider themselves bisexual do a speed dating event separately, or have the option to mingle. So either they can go and pick and choose someone that they would like to talk to, or have the option to like be able to talk to various people for like about 5 minutes. So I want to get the opportunity to do that. I'm also thinking of having like a color coordinated something to let people know that they are bisexual, so they want to be approached. And I know there's a bigger scale, but at least for these initial events, I'm wanting to simplify it and how people can talk to each other in that kind of way. And then once they grow, I would love to obviously niche down even more so that people can really just be a one-stop shop to what they're looking for.
So I have a question that is more about the profession of matchmaking, particularly when it is led by couples or married couples in general. I've been relatively active on the podcast forums online. I've looked through a lot of comment sections and everything. And there's one criticism that I always hear, and I want to see how you guys have addressed it. Have you ever come across people that said that people who are married really are out of touch with the current dating culture?
I can see that, because a lot of times those who want to open up their marriage were high school sweethearts and they don't know how to date, and they're married and they just don't know how to flirt. They don't know how to carry conversations because they never really had to. So
Mhm.
I would have to I guess it really just depends on the couple, because sometimes you do meet married couples who just like they just have great personalities from the bat. But some people have to like relearn how to date again. So I think it's like a mix of both, but I can definitely understand how people like just forget how to flirt. I mean, even single people don't know how to flirt. So it's definitely a strat or something that could be learned, and if they decided to like educate themselves more, they could be better about it. But yeah, you're right. Sometimes people come into, they're married and they don't know how to people with people, you know? So,
Now, I do have one quick caveat to that. That is good, but I actually meant like for the people that are leading it, like the matchmakers themselves or podcast hosts who do advice and these things. So, like, if you say that you've married and like, how long have you and your husband been together?
8 years.
So in 8 years, so what I have seen in the online communities of people that think that they know everything, not dissimilar from ourselves, that they will say, you know, what does this person know about what is currently happening out there in ways that could help the people that are looking for help?
Yes. Okay. I understand your question better now. So it could be a mix of both, but I think mainly we're still in touch only because we're continuing to talk to people. We're always learning about other people's experiences. And because of this networking, because of these conversations, we are still very much in the know of like the struggles of singles. Like that's also what partially motivates me to have this matchmaking firm is I have single friends who are like, this sucks and this is why it sucks. And I feel like I know I'm being empathetic. I'm like, oh my God, that would suck. Like that. So because we want to learn about people's experiences, we want to know the trends, we want to see like what apps are working, what are not. We even see messages, you know, if we're interested in like the tea of like what's going on and being a part of Facebook groups with a lot of single people and seeing their horror stories or hearing their success stories and how they met. So I think if married couples continuously are in the know and they put themselves in those positions to ask the questions, like hear people's experiences, that they still get it, although they're not living it. And then with the same caveat, because of apps that are for swingers, like for example, like Field, I do know what it's like to be a single person talking to people because you all go through the same struggles. Like either they're, you know, you talk to people and they're great online and then they're total duds in person, or they just can't carry a conversation in chat. Their profile is really cringe. Their photos don't really represent themselves. Like, so even though I'm not single, I still get those experiences, maybe on a surface level, but luckily I can pop in and pop out and like, you know, I get overwhelmed or burnt out on scrolling even that. But I know some people like they feel like that there's their only option because they don't know where to go to meet people or how to broach the subject. And it's hard. Dating is definitely hard. No doubt about that. And so to answer your question, a short answer, I don't think married people are out of touch when they're in the dating realm if they're keeping up with understanding single people's experiences today.
All right. Oleg has had his hand up for a while. Go for it.
Yes, Victoria. So I have a couple of questions. I think first one will be, is your clients usually from Chicago or you also have clients from another places, in other states? And if yes, how do you work at long distance? Like how do you connect people if they live far away from each other? Does it still works? Like do they travel to each other or?
Yes. So I have clients nationwide. Mainly in Chicago, just because that's where I am. That's where the most traction is.
Oh, like
But I
me.
do get leads from all kinds of areas like Texas, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, New York, Florida. Like they really do come from various areas, just how they found me randomly, like online essentially. And when I take them on as clients, pretty much how it works long distance is just you're being an executive recruiter. You're basically being a headhunter. So you're calling people, you're asking them like, hey, do you know someone who has these preferences or that matches these preferences, like, or anyone in the community that would know more people. So one of my strategies to share is like I reach people who would like to host, those who are in big or popular or out or public in the holiday world specifically, for example, and reach them like, hey, do you know someone like this? If not, who can I get in touch with? As well as like online forums and reaching people that way. So essentially it's a lot of just networking, calling, and then it's video chatting and talking to people that way. So another piece that also helps is there's an incentive to help me because part of the cost of matchmaking is with finder's fees. So I tell them like, hey, if you know somebody who matches this and they go on a date with my client, I'll pay you $100 just for that connection. So then they keep me on the back of their head. They could potentially continue to send people my way. And, being in part of my database is free. And, but it makes sense, like, if they go on a date with someone, like, they're legitimate and they're real. And or they're recommended or vetted in that kind of way, and then I vet them, and yeah, so it's just a lot of talking essentially, and reaching the right people, reaching the right communities, and then there's also the part where it's like they don't even have to be in the community essentially, because like a lot of people don't know until they know. So you could even reach into like people who have hobbies and like go to very niche groups, go be a part of very niche conversations, and then like randomly bring up, hey, is anyone in here interested in an open relationship? And then it usually gets a lot of like attraction to it because it's an interesting topic, non-monogamy in general. So
I guess because I'm poly, I don't usually get that question, or I don't usually get the whole you don't know anything about relationships because you've been married for so long, right? So I've been married, it'll be 15 years tomorrow. And thank you. And we've been together for 19 years. And I'm a relationship coach as well. So I get a lot of single people like saying, okay, so I tried this, what am I doing wrong? Or what am I doing, and it's also, they come to me because I've been married for so long and because I have other relationships too. So they're like, you must be doing something right in their head. They're like, you must be doing something right because you're poly and you're able to have multiple partners. And that's usually what they say to me, but I've never really gotten, I've never really gotten the whole you've been married for so long, so you wouldn't know how to flirt. And it's probably because I am poly and open.
Yeah, I think that definitely it comes into different communities. The ones that I go into tend to be more for the exclusively single people that are angry at women or angry at men. So those are the ones that I tend to fall into. Like we all know those podcasts, they're like spoofed all the time and everything. But that's been a common thread that I have seen in a lot of the comments, because they'll have a guest on there who's been married for 10 years and they'll say, well, he doesn't understand the dating world now because he's been married for 10 years. So I just wanted to see if that did actually come into the open poly community as far as that. But like I said, that was a very different community, but I did see that question a lot. And so I wanted to see if, as a married matchmaker for polyamorous people, if that had ever come up. And I don't think it did, because she thought that I was talking about her clients.
yeah, it has not come up, but to kind of piggyback off what Justin said,
We're
it's
all
like people do
piggybacking
see
here.
us. Yeah, of course, right? It's how conversations go, but it's like you do lead by example, and that's probably why you feel inspired to help other people, because you figured something you figured out how to communicate effectively and make your partners happy, and you can teach people how to do that as well. There's tons of different methods, and figuring out what makes people happy and doing
Right.
more of that essentially. And some people just like forget, or they're naturally people are very selfish, so you have to put yourself into someone else's perspective.
Correct.
And then but you don't do that unless you're prompted to, essentially, or that you really have that want, or you think everything's good but it's really not. And there's like this vicious cycle where everyone struggles to communicate, and you just have to get it off your chest, and then deal with it. But people really struggle to just get the words out, and because they're worried about the repercussions of what that might be. And so that's a nice thing
And
about
plus,
being in a
and
space
plus,
where
if
it's
there's
open.
and if there's one thing that humans hate more than anything, it's being uncomfortable for 30 seconds.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I realized that, being poly for so long, poly and swingers, they get to conversations real quick. Like it's like, okay, this is what I like, this is what I want, this is what I need. Do you got that? And it's like,
Well, they share
no.
that common
Okay, bye,
denominator.
next.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like we just get to conversations a lot faster, I find, than a lot of people that are in monogamous relationships. I just find that we just kind of like, we're very open, and we like, sometimes you don't like to communicate, but you have to communicate if you're poly or a swinger. You have to. It's almost like a mandatory thing. So it's like, and if you're not being honest, then you're not really doing poly or swinging, you're cheating.
So I have a question to you, Victoria. I was at the networking event and I met another matchmaker here in New York, and he was the one actually who referred me to you. And a lot of people actually don't even know that matchmakers exist. And would you give us an idea how does usually process looks like when somebody reach you out? I don't know, they found you on Instagram, YouTube, anywhere, and then they message you and it's like, oh, I want to find a husband, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, a third one to our couple or something. And then how does it actually work? What's the process? Like, are you interviewing them, and what's the what's your, let's say, a time frame that you guarantee? Obviously, probably you don't guarantee anything that you're gonna find somebody, right? It's like 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, or 10 years. Like, we want to know, people watching you, and we want to know, like, what's the process of it? Like, how does it actually work?
Yes. So the process essentially is you find me one way or another. And typically, what I would like those people to do next is to join my free dating database. And that's just a quick application. It gives me some surface level answers. It just kind of very quickly gets to know you. So it has like some core value questions in there. It asks if you're married, if you want non-monogamy, if you want monogamy, and like a little about me, your height, your age, your career is an optional one, and salary range. And then from there, I see you in my database, or we're messaging each other. So I'm like, okay, next, let's set up a free consultation call or conversation. And typically, I give them the option to either do a phone call or Zoom, preferably Zoom because it feels like you're talking to them in person. And from there, I ask more questions, like the ones that they didn't fill out, the ones that I'm more keen on that kind of need more elaboration. Like, do you have experience? Like, what kind of dynamic do you want? And sometimes people come to me and the way they describe that they want like to be poly, but it sounds more like they want open relationships. And then I tell them like, does it sound like you actually want this? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, then you probably are leaning more towards open. Like that's kind of what you really want. And kind of quickly educating them on like themselves a little bit because a lot of people are like, I haven't had one, but I want one. And so I gauge all these kind of questions like, why do you think you want that? And one of the questions that I also ask is, I want my clients to be ethical. And so one of the questions, for example, I ask various ones, but it's like, okay, so you want to be in a non-monogamous lifestyle relationship, what kind of experiences might you want? Because, there's different dynamics and different activities that you can do in the lifestyle. And if a client or a potential client comes to me and they say like, oh, I only want to play with girls and I only want my partner to only play with girls, that to me is unethical because that to me is a one penis policy. That's not fair for whoever he might meet. And and it's like you want to dig in deeper, like why do you feel that way? Like, and typically if they have a one penis policy, I'm like, might be better for coaching purposes or something off, or I can't help you essentially. So I figure out questions like that. And if they're married, I need to know that. And if we move forward, I actually interview the partner to make sure that they're aware and they're consenting to what I'm offering to do. So it's not like I don't take the word of one person. I make sure that I have access and conversation one way or another, more typically a conversation so that they can ask anything to me. So everyone's on the same page and kind of go from there. And then, so once we kind of hash out those conversations, I run background checks, I have candidate agreements, I have contracts, and the different things that I offer a pay per match option, and I also offer a 6-month membership where I do guarantee minimum 3 matches, but there's no maximum. But if I don't find 3 matches, I extend the contract at no extra cost. Like I will find someone who matches your preferences and be able to move forward from there. And so after the brief conversations and the contracts, then we go into a very deep interview process. It takes about an hour and a half, 2 hours, where I just kind of ask everything about you, your history, your present, your future, hobbies, interests, things you're allergic to. I really run the works on this conversation. Like I want to get to know you, and who I think would be compatible with you. And from there, I get that information. I make sure their profile's on point. I make sure their photos are on point because they are a necessary evil. They are important. And from there, that's when I start my search. And it does, and if I don't have someone in my immediate database that I think it's a compatible match, then I won't use them. I will go and search for someone who I think is more compatible. And then let's say I find somebody through my various means. Typically, I have the woman half decide first, or the person who I want to present to my client. So that way, when I introduce someone to my client through a profile, they already want to meet them. So that way it's like quick yes or no. And if that's a pay per match, it's a yes or no. But typically I want them to do the 6 month because just keep trying and then we'll keep figuring out like what you do like and what you don't like actually and kind of go from there. But another piece too to my matchmaking business is like, okay, you say yes to this profile. I coordinate the date and I don't exchange contacts unless both parties mutually agree that they'd like to move forward to the second date. So that way there's no pressure to like exchange numbers or have to do like a weird breakup or explain like why you actually didn't like the person. Like people do things under pressure, you know? So I eliminate that. I'm the one that exchange contacts if they move forward. And if they don't move forward, then they receive the client receives feedback on how they can be better. Or if the other one wants feedback as well, we could offer that too. But typically either feedback and keep on keeping on until we find their person.
People are coming into ethical non-monogamy with different levels of experience, right? And you know that can sometimes create an obstacle, I imagine, too, in matchmaking. So I wondered if you could speak a little bit to that, and also in the sense, does your firm provide some sort of like, say you meet somebody who would be a good match 6 months from now with the proper coaching, or you know, a coaching in the sense of learning about identity, learning about non-monogamy, you know, is there certain criteria that you have with your clients with regard to knowledge of ethical non-monogamy in order to take them on as a client? And if they are not at that criteria, does your firm or are there firms that provide coaching or therapy or something like that that might be able to get somebody to the spot where you know they can get to as a matchmaker? You know, oh, if you just have a little bit more of thought process around this, I could take you on as a client. Is that a question?
Yes. So I offer date coaching for men, not for women at the moment, because there's almost always something to work on with men. And I can very quickly gauge if they know how to date. And, you know, matchmaking is expensive. It's a big investment. And if I feel like I put the perfect, if I find the perfect person and I put them in front of you and you'll mess it up, I'm probably going to suggest that we do date coaching first. And with my date coaching, it's my husband and I. We do 5 to 6 sessions. We take turns with each one. And that way they get male and female perspective and they learn pretty much everything about non-monogamy and how to date and how and why they do these certain things. And once they have that knowledge and we feel confident in them, that if presented with the perfect person in front of them, that they wouldn't screw it up, then we would move forward to matchmaking because I don't want to match someone who's unmatchable. And a lot of it is just education. Um, and that's kind of part of the consultation, that's part of the interviews where it's like, I really do think you have a handle on understanding what it takes to be in a confident and promising non-monogamous relationship and when you don't. And if they are a very cool person and you can tell that they really just have it together and they just need help finding someone, whether they're just busy professionals or they want to be more private, then I kind of match their search based on that, based on their experiences. Like they're new and they want to explore it. I'll find someone else who's also brand new and wants to explore. So that way they can kind of go about it that way together. So it really is based on if I think, you know, how they are and how they know how to court or how to be um just a good potential partner. Either they'll need coaching first or I will match someone based on their experience level.
Okay, so that was kind of my question. And I also had a question before about kind of security concerns, but you kind of answered all of my questions. And I'm just kind of like, now I just want to work for you. I just want to be like, you know what, can I just get on the payroll? I mean, wow, this is amazing. And I'm so glad and so happy and so blessed and honored that you're here.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I definitely thought everything through because I know like there's work to be done for non-monogamous couples, especially when it comes to legalities, and people do want to have this dynamic, but they aren't comfortable being public or putting themselves out there like that for good reasons. And so that's why we do have the NDAs to make sure like we actually have that layer of protection and you know the no exchanging phone numbers, like all these different things so that everyone feels safe to just be their authentic self and be able to move forward from that kind of foundation.
So, I have a follow-up question about your coaching.
hmm
In terms of you and your husband doing the coaching, what do you find are the most common challenges that people have, and how do you address them? How do you help them address them?
Yeah. So a few of the most common ones is really their online if they're online dating, their online presence. Because you know, people are just so quick to swipe. So you want something that is engaging and interesting and not vague and not basic and boring. So making sure you have pictures that show off personality, that have good lighting, that have good angles is part of it. And also having a profile that has, it's like 70% you, 30% what you're looking for, and wording it in a way, you know, where grammar is important, and, you know, pretty much just having their, I'm trying to think of the term where it's like, oh, you don't, nothing generic. Because, you know, we think that everyone's copying each other. It's boring. We don't want that. So having like an online presence, and basically you're marketing yourself, right? So teaching men how to market themselves. And with marketing themselves, it also comes with image consulting. So that's something that we have involved in our coaching programs, is that we have a stylist and we have image consulting sessions, so they know how to dress. And then it's also like how to build up confidence in themselves and what that might look like. So that's something that we work on as well with the men. And then it's basically how to have the conversations. And there are like lots of tips and tricks on how to keep one going, how to ask the right questions. And, you know, a lot of guys are just so scared to make the first move. They're so scared to ask these things. And it's like, okay, you don't have to worry about asking those things. Like, they are important, but there sometimes is a time and place for certain things. Like, you don't want to ask certain cringy questions on the first date, even though they might be important, but you can, but like, ask that at a later time, like kind of go through these little milestones and how to have these and of course, everyone's different, and some people like want a credit score before a first date, and sometimes that works for people. I do know a couple who's like, I need your credit score, I need to run a background check on you. Like, she used type A, and he did it, and now they're married. So it really is finding someone who is like that to you and kind of going about that. But yeah. So I think those are the top things that we work on, because that's almost always something to work on with these men.
So have you ever gotten into any issues related to jealousy or something like that before, when somebody, let's say a couple is wanting to look for a third?
I have I have not had to worry about that yet, personally. But that's like another conversation piece to have. And I kind of gauge like how the relationship dynamic is. Like, is she like, because, you know, sometimes when you're poly and someone is monogamous but the other person is poly, it's like, okay, why is it like that? And kind of figuring out that. And if I get a good read on her, like that's actually what she wants to do, then great. But jealousy is a common feeling and emotion that everyone has, even in monogamous relationships. And it's just a matter of working through it and what makes someone jealous, and do they have the open kind of communication? That's kind of like a question that I ask the couple, like, what do you guys do when the other one's feeling jealous? Like, it's kind of like one of my interview questions. So not saying it doesn't happen, it certainly does. I haven't had drama like that happen to me personally yet, because I am so thorough with these interviews. And if I suspect that like it's unethical and someone's not enthusiastic about it, then I don't want to work forward with that, because I don't want those problems, obviously. So
Okay, thank you.
Victoria, you and I just became very best friends because one of my criticisms about the way that polyamory gets presented in online discussions is that when somebody brings up the question of jealousy, people always be like, well, have you heard about compersion? And I'm like, that's not a good way to deal with jealousy, because that's like, hey, I know you're sad, but have you tried happy? Like, you're just telling them to feel something different instead of what they're
yeah,
feeling. That's not navigating, that's avoiding. So you and I just became best friends because I'm totally with you on that.
I accept.
Sergio, go ahead. Your hand is up.
Victoria, we learned a little bit about your process to getting to Matchmaker. We learned a little bit about your process in matchmaking, a little bit of the work that you do pre matchmaking with regard to people. Is there anything else that comes into play post? You know, after you come in and been able to connect that couple, right? Does your firm stay in contact with them? Do they provide any type of support services? Great. Now I'm in a polyamorous relationship. Where do kind of I go from here? And do you have kind of like a fun story? Maybe a couple that you put together that came back for a third.
I
Or
hate you.
um, can you repeat what the first question was?
yeah, mostly about the post, right? So you
Oh, post,
interview,
yes.
go through the
Okay.
process, and maybe you've made that match, right? And it worked out for a little
Yes.
bit. What happens after?
Yes. So if I make a match and it's successful, I follow up with them or my client about once a week. And if they're like, you know, this is my person, I want to pause my membership. So then I pause their membership. And if they're with this person, it eventually does expire. I think I have to double check my contract, but I think it's like after a year, like it can be paused a couple times if you want to explore connections without worrying about running out of time. Because if you don't pause your membership, I'm still searching for you. And you could be dating, you could be talking to a couple people, and that's perfectly okay. Typically, I'm like, okay, well, if it's going well, you should probably focus on this person, but of course, it's up to the client. I can guide them the best I can, but unless they pause their membership, that is an option. Um, and as far as the follow-up, I do the dating portion. I tell you how to market yourself and how to meet someone. But for the follow-up, I don't consider myself like a relationship coach. I want to actually continue, and I have contacts, but I want more contacts for those who would be good for the follow-up, for those who want to take it to these different levels if they feel like they want that support. So, of course, I follow up with communication, like very, how are things going? You want to pause it? How are you feeling? But as far as they're like, no, we're definitely feeling established, but there's still something to work on. That's something that would be out of my realm of possibilities because that's not something that I'm focusing on. But I know there's tons of poly relationship coaches out there, would love to collaborate. And then those who are relationship coaches or they talk to singles, like I also have a collaboration guide myself that kind of lays out everything and like the finder's fees for finding clients. And so I'm very collaborative in that kind of way. But yeah. So
Quick
say that's
follow-up
for the
question to
follow-up.
that. When in your dating process, in your dating service process, do you work only with singles or do you also take on couples that are looking to,
Yes, I
open
do
up the
both.
together?
Typically, it's singles who want a relationship. Um, Poly people that I have talked to typically don't want to make the investment. So that's why I'm working on separate things for them, like the speed dating events or, social gatherings and that kind of way. But they do come. And then there are couples who want to be in a throuple situation but I have to ask them additional questions, right, to make a successful triad, right? Because there's a lot of relationships going on. It's like, what do you do if one connection kind of dies out? So it's kind of like, do you do things separately? So I ask these kind of questions like ahead of time because, if a couple is like, we only do everything together, it's like, okay, that's probably doomed to fail. Works for some, not most, from what I've gathered. So I do all of it. Yeah, as long as everyone's on the same page and consenting and aware, I'll do couples who want a relationship. So typically it's those who are relationship oriented, who want a partner, but not a play partner. So that's kind of where I don't do play partners. It's those who are relationship oriented. So as long as I get a feel on that, then yeah, I'll work with couples and singles and poly people.
Collaboration. Sorry, something in my throat. Um, Quick question, asking for a friend. So let's just say the guy, new client, and he is bisexual and all his relationships are with men, right? And now he's looking for a female companion. Do you find a lot of people in your clientele are looking specifically for a bisexual female clienteles?
Yeah, there are people in my dating database who are bisexual, who are open to having other bisexual connections. Not as common, but there are definitely in there, and or those who specifically elaborate, like anyone, like they get really niche down to what they're interested in and what they're not. So, yes, the men who are bisexual who want a woman, and women who are bisexual who want a bisexual man, they who want to have that balance. Yeah, so there's a mix of
Thank you.
everyone in my database.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
I think I'll have a question about gay people. Do you have any experience with the gay people, and would you like to try it out? And is there any difference? I was checking in the last maybe 3 months. I was checking. There's so many events and speed dating events in New York City. Like some of them, like like they have like nine events out of 10 for straight people and only one for queer, and I don't understand, like, do we operate differently, or gay people don't look for, or gay men, let's say, don't look for a relationship, or like what's going on? Do you have any feedback about that?
I think it's just, the overall population of people, right? Like you think of the whole city and then how many people are are in the community. So it's like just based on the masses, right? And those who run events for traditional people go where the money goes, right? And so when, LGBTQ communities are really small, it's hard to gather people. Like someone that I know who's trying to host events for gay men, he's getting no hits for whatever reason. He's not really sure why. So it's kind of like hard reaching these
What if
people,
you
like they can only put in so much effort. Yeah.
what if you connect with make a partnership with a gay person, a gay man, let's say, who will help you to, because we think our community is huge, because we know places, we know people, we know destinations, etc. And with your knowledge, with your experience, with your, the blueprint that you already have, like, also open a chapter for gay men.
Yeah, I will work with anyone who wants a non-monogamous relationship. Have I yet? Not yet, but I will. And that's kind of where I do my executive recruiting. That's where I do my little secret sauce. That's where I would branch off and figure out like who are these people. And, because once you meet one non-monogamous man, they know other ones and they have the incentive to introduce me. So that's kind of how that would branch off in that kind of way.
And I think you also work with another matchmakers, right, around the country.
Yes,
matchmakers,
matchmakers
or even in the world, what I heard.
Typically, matchmakers are very collaborative, and we want to match our clients. We want to match people. We want to bring more love into the world, and so there are the non-monogamous matchmaker community is slowly but surely growing. There are a couple other ones, and so I would reach out to them first or second or whatever, like whenever I feel like they might have a match in their area, and kind of go from there. So yes, we matchmakers are very collaborative and want to make connections as much as possible, and go from there.
I'll tell you one thing about my experience with Oleg is that he will always believe there is never enough representation for anybody.
Well, you're doing the right thing. You're building community. You're being public, and that's all you can do. You just got to keep on keeping on. You're doing great.
Agreed.
Thank you so much. Well, it's been an hour. I think we can handle one more. Victoria can handle many questions. But let's do one more if we have anything, even from our audience or anybody. Yes, Sergio, I see your hand. You wanna go? You wanna ask something?
I just wanted to say that it's been just really refreshing having Victoria here today, like sharing about a part of the world or a part of dating and ethical non-monogamy that, to be honest, I hadn't really heard of Matchmaker. And like I said from the beginning, I love Matchmakers, having grown up with them. So I think that the work that you're doing is not just really cool, but it's really special. I loved what you said at the end there is about putting more love into the world. And that was kind of the basis for my journey in, ethical non-monogamy and polyamory, is coming from a very conservative background, realizing that the one thing that I have that is not finite is the love that I have to give, right? And that changed my world when I realized it. And the more I've put that love out there into all kinds of relationships, whether it's romantic, friendships, lovers, all this kind of stuff, they've all come back to me tenfold, right? So I think that that's where I say that what you're doing isn't just really cool and important. It's really special. It's very unique, because when you do make those connections, you literally are changing a person's life completely. So I just want to say thank you so much for being on the panel today. And you'll probably be hearing from me on the socials. So
You just made my heart feel so full saying that, because it's so true. Everything that you said is, and it just enhances your quality of life. And it enhances everyone else's quality of life when love is done properly.
That's beautiful. All right, so I want to say thank you to everyone. I want to say thank you to Victoria. We are just, at the beginning of our polyamory chat here on our podcast, and it's going great. I'm very excited and happy to be connected with beautiful people like you. I have so many reasons right now to finally go to Chicago. I've never been there. I think I have to go. Yes, I like I think this stream, this video will be very informative for a lot of people. We're gonna make sure put your information in the description below. Please share this link with other people.